Well, this is a wonderful start with some technical difficulties. Sorry, everyone. Hey, welcome to Catch Fire this week. We have one of my longtime friend and mentors here with us tonight, Dave Price. He's coming to us from Northern California. So hang on to your hats. Here we go with this week's Catch Fire episode.
Learning has always been the key motivator.
I'll never forget my first time on the air.
This biomed stuff is really cool.
I don't daydream, I just do dreams. Built the fire, no camping. Imagine your next chapter for uncommon paths. It's the roadmap. With special guests you can learn from, more valuable than a treasure chest. Unlocking knowledge, catch fire, turn impossible to a playground. Difficulties we do them in like a pool table, got holes for 'em. Inspiration, catch fire, find your passion and live for it. Start bold, it gets harder, dig further. Inspiration, catch fire, find your passion and live for it.
Well, welcome everybody. Tonight we have Dave Price here with us. Dave, are you there?
I am here. I am
Welcome.
here. Simon, that's like an intro. I feel I don't know if I got introduced, but like the show got introduced. That's really well done. I'm kind of pumped up.
Cool.
That I don't know what we're going to talk about, but I just know it's going to be exciting. Man, it's good to be with you. I miss you.
Yeah, I miss you too. I'm like, my browser's freezing up, and so I'm like really nervous that this is all really laggy. Am I jittery for you?
You are not jittery, but you are probably on a 10-second delay. The audio is real, but if I look at you, it's
okay.
It's a little bit of delay.
Okay. Well, hopefully it corrects up here. Let's dive in.
I'm in.
This is a trivia question. We didn't talk about this before. Do you remember how many years we've known each other as of about right now? I mean, more or less.
I can do that math. Should I do the math? Like, okay, so how many months do I need precision on this?
Oh, I was thinking to the year, or even a couple years is fine.
Yeah, we met in the fall of I'm gonna go fall of 2000.
Yeah. So like 20, 21 years. Wow.
Yeah, buddy.
That's
and I tell you what, we're just looking at younger, you and I, right? Like every year goes by and we're just taking years off now, right? It's like it's 21 years younger.
Well, because I got to this point where I like should have shaved my head way earlier. And then so I like lost, or I got gained years or whatever when I shaved my head finally. So that was awesome.
Got it. Yeah. For those listening in, before we kicked off the recording, I had a beard. I started with the quarantine beard as many men did.
Yeah.
And it just came in gray. Like straight, like I haven't really worn a beard ever. And it just came in gray. And I'm like, this is just not fair. And so it's every month that went by, I just felt older and older. I finally shaved it off. So I took off 10 years when I shaved off the beard, but the gray was a bit telling. So the things we learned during quarantine and are learning still, but
we learned
21 years. So you and I have been through a few seasons together, haven't we?
We have. And one of the things that I learned about you first that I thought was tremendously interesting was that you could ski black diamonds while eating your sack lunch, like snow ski black diamonds.
While eating, that was fun. Yeah. Well, so I grew up in Colorado. So that was one of the things right before they let you like go to the next level in school, you had to demonstrate your black diamond prowess. So mine was eating while going down the slope. And also you got to maximize your time on the runs, buddy. Right? Like who wants to stop in? It doesn't matter if you're cold, like you just got to go. Yeah, that was a fun trip. Oh man. 21 years.
Yeah. So
21 years.
And then I was also thinking about this, that I think you were one of the first people, and I thought about this about like 2 hours ago. So I think I've had some time to sit with it. I'm not just blurting it out. I think you were one of the first people that got to know me separately from what I did. And I really appreciate that. Like, that's one of the things I think that's left this lasting mark of like, oh man, like I started to get this like, oh, this is what it's like when somebody, knows you and not just what you do or not just what you're good at. And it was really cool. So
Wow.
thank you.
Well, you are welcome. And I hope I know that has been true of a lot more relationships in your life since then. But you are welcome. That was a gift to me as well. Man, right here, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
What a wonderful reminder to me from you about that. And yeah, what a beautiful thing for any relationship, right?
yeah.
Wow. Whew. You got heavy fast here.
Sorry.
Heavy.
Well, I
Whoa.
think, it's like part of the reason I wanted to do this was to this is really business speak, but offer my network to people, I guess. Right. But it's like, then there's like so many of these relationships that are like, I've been blessed and fortunate to have a few long-term relationships like this. I think you're one of the longest.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, we have started as mentor-mentee, in my opinion, transitioned at some point to friends, watch each other become fathers and parents. Like,
yes,
you just, it's like, okay, yeah, we've worked together a little bit, and we'll probably talk about a lion's share of professional stuff during this, but I just want to kind of set the stage for people of like, this is a little bit hard fought, hard won. Like, we're not just going to be like riffing on, prosperity, make it rain kind of shit. So.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, when you said that, it's like, yes to all those things, and also a lot of hard shit and pain along the way, which is really where people talk about, right, the value of relationships that you've had for a long time, and the time, and right, like there's just something about how relationships age and get better with time. And a major component of that is, yeah, it turns out when things go hard south, bad fast, hit the fan, that's when you really get to know somebody. If you're able to show up. And I know we've tried to do that from a distance, but anyway, yeah, there's been a lot of that. Yeah, you've known me through a few transitions, and vice versa. So, and with that, I can say I'm proud to know you as a friend, right? Because respect you. And you mentioned that I was a mentor coming into this, and I know that is where this relationship started, and I love that about this relationship. But also 21 years later, and I've said this to you before, but now I'll say it again, right? I see you so much as a peer, and that's the gift of the time as well. So
it's huge.
Yeah.
Going just a tad bit lighter, another thing I learned from you that I don't think I've ever told you about, but there's been many things I've learned from you that have changed my world and how I see things. The least of which is not that you taught me that you could apply olive oil to food before you grill it, and that would greatly enhance the grilling process. And I don't know if told you that I learned this from you, but that night in Portland when we grilled, I think Philippe was with us, and your old business partner, and you're like, oh yeah, we throw some olive oil on the steak, and I'm like, what? Like olive oil on, and it was changed my world.
Yeah, and you have to be careful, because the flash point of olive oil, right, is a little low, so it depends on your temperature. But olive oil is a great enhancer, and to this day, I mean, olive oil on fish grilled, oh man, so good. Well, so yeah, Portland turned me into, there were things I learned to do in Portland, and one was to not mess up my food and do it right. But yeah, that's really fun. That's really fun.
And then I see behind you, you have some shelf decorations. Do you want to tell us about your?
Yeah. So check this out. Holidays, and people are now guessing at our ages, right? Because we've known each other 21 years. But my mom shipped me a bunch of boxes this last Christmas, and I'm like, don't send them to me. I have no place for these. So she sent me all the boxes from my childhood, going way back, elementary school, junior high. And it was actually a gift to go through those things. And I had to go through them because I had no space. So I documented, but I found a couple gems, and we'll do this quickly. Right. No Wheaties in there, but check this bad boy out.
Wow.
Michael Jordan signed Wheaties box. Somehow I saved this.
Oh my gosh.
And you know what the value, because I looked this up, the value on eBay of this Michael Jordan box is today? Care to take a guess?
I'm guessing like 4,000.
It is $4.25. That was the bid. So, but yeah, Mike, like my hero right here. I wanted to be
Like
Michael
Mike.
Jordan, right? I mean, he was a huge shout. And also, and then this gem. So now, come on, this is my childhood. This is not recent past, as in, right?
So
Look
not
at that.
Mandalorian, but
the original
the trilogy,
right? The original Mandalorian. So this is Boba Fett's ship right here, right? You even have the door, a little chewed on, little dog chew. Oh, by the way, I have daughters.
Yes.
I injured my hand. Let me see, get that in there. And so apparently the cure-all for an injured hand is glitter nail polish. I didn't know that, but this is why you have daughters, to learn these things. So
yeah,
apparently this is my color as well. And if you could see the sparkles there. So anyway, yeah, Mandalorian ship right there. Boop. Cool. Original. And yeah, so that was the gift. But yeah, I love Star Wars and Michael Jordan. Those are my things.
Okay. I want to ask you about the Last Dance documentary, but I feel like we could go down a rabbit hole on that. So we'll say that for another conversation.
There are all these other things.
So, okay. So we met each other right before I started college, and I'm not trying to oversummarize my growing up status or lens, only to say that I would say that it's fair to say I didn't know a lot of entrepreneurs. And if I knew them as people through like church or other organizations, I didn't understand what they did. So I was just reflecting for this show. I realized, okay, I at some point had this category of like, you have a full-time job, or if you don't have a full-time job, maybe that's one thing that makes you an entrepreneur. And I don't know. That was my oversimplistic.
That's kind of my father's definition, right? To this day, I've just got my first real job. That's now a full-time job. But everything I've done before this, like, has not been a real job, because it's been right working for myself. Entrepreneurship, aka not a real job. So yeah, that dichotomy, that's apparently correct according to my dad.
Right. And I think one of the things that I didn't know it at the time, but looking back, what you started to help me and kind of stretch me on, and then I think I've just been grateful to be on the journey since, is just this idea of iterating on who you serve or how you serve or what you need to serve or what business model you're using. Those things like enhance kind of help you enhance your vocation, help you align to who you are, help form who you are, and that you could do that in a full-time role. You could do that in a entrepreneurial, mindset, or anything in between. So, do you feel like that kind of rings true? That iteration is something that you've majored in, maybe?
Oh my gosh, yeah, like to a fault. If that were school, I've got all the advanced PhDs that were now a waste of time, and I'm in debt paying them off. So yes, I've iterated to a fault. But say that again. Say again. You had the three things, like the who you serve.
Yeah, who you serve. So like what audience that you are, targeting, how you do that. So kind of what the mechanism is, or the vehicle, and then what skills and resources you might use to serve them. And kind of, it's like, it's not a lot or it's not a gambling thing, it's not a chance, right? I mean, you're purposely like kind of spinning each knob, but there's different combinations. Yeah.
I like those. Okay. Those are good. I definitely have things I could say about that. Off the cuff, maybe sensical. We shall see.
But I mean, yes. you started pursuing a career, like, I think it was electrical engineering.
Yeah. Mechanical. Engineering stuffs. Yep.
But those three things are kind of locked together in a career field like mechanical engineering. I mean, you're serving, I don't know, not just factories, but I mean, you're making things. That happens in a certain environment. You're probably doing that through CAD mostly. I
mean, sure. So I think here's what's interesting. The first thing that strikes me about that model that you're bringing, it resonates really deeply with me. I orient and see the world in that way. I don't know if every entrepreneur I've met would agree, and maybe even a minority would, right? Because, there's two things. So going to the engineering school example that you just gave, I have always had this wonderful paradox in people. I enjoy people. I love people. I like helping people. I also get really frustrated on people's behalf when things aren't working right. Right. So seeing someone struggle with something, I want to like make that right again to a fault, but that's something I enjoy doing, because I enjoy helping and removing obstacles or barriers to people being able to do something in a new capacity or way, like personal growth. So I thought I wanted to be a professor for a long time, because in my romantic version of the world, a professor, like true education, educatus, that was not Latin at all, but is to draw out of someone, to reach in and to pull out. And I love that idea of drawing someone out. So I'm oriented to the world that way. And I love technology stuff. I love machines and the way the world works. I love science, and being able to, where those two things came together. So like people and technical stuff, engineering, mechanical things, that's always been an intersection I've really enjoyed. So when I went to school, I wanted to find that intersection, which there's a lot of marketing terms for it now: human-centered design, holistic design, or design in general. I didn't get that in school. I had I did mechanical engineering with a biomedical emphasis, because I thought that would get me into that human place. I went on later and started doing bioethics, because the engineering side was unsatisfactory. It was a feeder. My school system was a feeder for the aerospace industry. So my first job was working on AWACS landing gear struts. Not very satisfying. Important and amazing, not a satisfying design experience, like holistic design. So I thought, well, I want to get back to like the human and the technical, bioethics maybe. So I went on and started doing graduate work in ethics, thinking that that's where I would go. But so that said, I am just oriented toward how can I solve a problem that helps people. Right. That's a key motivator for me. And that brings a lot of meaning. But what kind of solution, and not like on what level of helping someone do I really excel at? I think that's more things we could talk about there. But yes, that's how I'm more. Oh, and I had another thread I was going to run with there. But yeah, I think, oh geez, there's several places I could go, but trying to pull that thread of how can I help people in a satisfying, meaningful way has been like a key theme in all the iterations I've done. So let me just stop there. And you've seen some of those. Would you agree? You've seen my quote path. Okay.
Well, I think I knew what you were good at before I had really seen like a corporate product manager up close or something like that. And I just knew that you advocated for the user. Like, I think that's kind of what I knew. And I was like, oh, that's really good. Like, we need more of that, like we need more people that are like kind of putting themselves in the shoes of real people and not just kind of building on a mountaintop or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I 100% agree with that. I think, and so that's where you get into entrepreneurship, and there can be a lot of reason people want to be an entrepreneur, like assume risk for an endeavor and, put real things on the table and say, I'm all in. Like I want to create, I want to build, I want to do something. I do think that a lot of people want to build and create and do things because they want to make money, right? They want to create, they want to create power. They want to do, like, there could be a lot of things. Uh-oh, there you are. You snuck away. And those are okay. Like, there's a lot of reasons to want to create something. And I really don't have any opinions on those things either way. I just know that hasn't been my driver. Okay. But then if we kind of orient on like, how do you build a great product? Then the things you're mentioning there are incredibly true. And even beyond empathy, compassion, right? Compassion for the people using your product. And as much as you can narrow that gap to feel compassion, that's important. And then recently in my career, really taking the focus on, okay, I want to build a product that meets people's needs and serves them in a certain way. I like that. But where does that start? That starts with the team that I'm working with that's building the product. And if the attributes, the characteristics, the experience of the members on that team, if they're not that thing that I want my end user to experience. So for example, if I want to build a product that just oozes like trust, Like this is a safe software product that I can trust, that I can use. I trust the company, I trust the product. Wouldn't it make sense then that the team that's building that software product should experience, ooze, develop, improve, like an atmosphere of trust amongst themselves? Like, shouldn't they be the experts, not just on what trust is, but also in how do you experience trust? How do you cultivate trust? Right? Like, because they're the ones building the thing. So that's where my focus has been recently. And yeah, it's interesting. Teams and collaboration and working together is, that's a dynamic little system you have going on. So, but that's where my interest and focus is in all of that. And I guess, we could talk about all that when it comes to who you serve. So,
and we kind of talked about before this, like, we don't get to talk super often, but when we do, like, we always have like 50 times more stuff to talk about than we get time for. So hopefully we'll be a little less scatterbrained for everybody watching than we normally are when it's just us. So.
Well, we shall see, but it's sometimes the scatterbrain stuff is fun, but I'll follow you.
Yeah. No. I'm just kind of giving it. So one of these, then a thread I wanted to pull is, I don't know if it's a dichotomy. I would maybe the word is a tension, if you will, this tension between helping people, then you mentioned, and producing value. And sometimes those line up, sometimes they don't. I just wondered if you had any reflections on, as you've iterated, like, do you feel like there's been motivations to both? Like, okay, I want to iterate because I want to help people more. Okay, I want to iterate because I want to produce more value and maybe adjust the income. How are those two kind of tensions played out?
Oh man. So it turns out these things don't work if you don't make money. And it turns out that I can go a lot longer with a lot less money on my own than my threshold for hard times is a little bit greater than that of other people around me and other people in my care, right? So my family, my children. So there's actually some really, really hard lessons learned there. Let me just think for a second and kind of piece a couple thoughts together here.
Yeah.
Okay. When you decide that you want to like step through that door, some magical door in your life, right? Turn the handle and step in, and I want to become an entrepreneur. I want to create a thing. When you take that step, it's going to be happening because there's something you believe in. Like there's an internal core motivation and something you want to bring about in the world. And maybe that's self-serving, maybe it's other serving, like whatever your motivations are. And they're messy, right? Like there's a fuel that's firing you to get through that door. And if anything, I have learned that once that fire is started, it is really hard to turn it off. And whatever that pursuit is and the thing that you're trying to build and what you're chasing, so be it serving other people, be it serving yourself, what is really challenging over time through the ups and downs is knowing how to like look around and come out of this like intense pursuit and focus on a thing and belief in your own capabilities, belief in your own capacity, but also take a step back and do some kind of diagnostic check of like, hey, is this okay? It's like, is this working? Are things going well around me? And that is a learned skill. That's not something you get to enter this process with. That is something that you have to develop over time. And there's tactics. You can like having people around you, reading well, learning well, all those things. But one of the things that I did not understand well is that that I can have relationally, I can have things firing on all cylinders with my customers, with my team, with those that are part of my company. And that doesn't mean that we're doing something that's sustainable. Right? So creating a kind of value, right? But it may be meaningful. Like look at nonprofits, right? Like there's a lot of nonprofits out there and a lot of people that love working for nonprofits doing incredibly important, meaningful contributions in the world.
Yes.
Right. But yet they are sacrificing a lot of like financial value, right? Like they're taking, right. But how do you take that and make it sustainable? So that's an extreme example, but in the, for-profit entrepreneurship realm, right. Like it's hard. It's just hard to match up all those things. So I've pursued meaning and I pursued satisfaction in other areas. When on the flip side, there were other dials in the startup or in the taking those diagnostics in the situation that they weren't firing very well. And that leads to, well, there's a whole other downfall like that. But like, let me say this. Oh gosh, I'm on 4 different tangents in my mind right now. They're stepping back. Anytime when you are exploring and creating something new, entrepreneurship, and you are in a situation where you are experiencing scarcity, there's a lot of categories where scarcity may be setting in. That mindset, that perspective, that reality will drive you to make certain types of choices, right? Like scarcity mindset, we talk about it. And you can mitigate that and you can work against it. But I think so when you talk about value, right? Like if you are not creating the right kinds of value, and therefore you're leaving yourself in a situation in a place of scarcity, that's not sustainable. And that's been a hard lesson to learn, right? And you really have to step out of those situations to get there. I'm talking very high level and ambiguously, but kind of wrapping.
Well, I think,
jump in.
I mean, I was wondering if there's 2 accesses, and these aren't like magical. I'm not going to write a textbook on them, but there's this kind of like who, how, what access. And then maybe there's this other access that's like, like you're talking about, like how high or low, like how close are you to the people that you're serving, and how many layers of abstraction are between you and the people that you're serving. And, I think that in 2021, I mean, we have things like influencers that are like, I mean, how many freaking levels of abstraction between an influencer, and the people that they serve? I mean, it's insane. Versus, what written language was potentially created to track agrarian and, kind of trading initially. It's like, you were super close. Like you have a goat, I have a pig. Now, you have the pig and I have the goat, and we're both happy or not. I mean, it's really clear, like either that worked or that didn't. So. Have
you ever read Matthew Crawford's Shop Class is Soulcraft?
No.
That's a good one, but he talks about those things. So, I mean, yes to all that. And I would say, let me, this isn't quite Matthew Crawford, but that's a great book because it talks about the value and meaning of craftsmanship and work, but he talks a lot about being able to, your 5 senses, see, touch, taste, smell, the thing you're doing. But the closer you are to the end result of what you're doing, his book was about like the more satisfying, meaningful life that you can bring. And a lot of modern work, right? And this is where Marx theory comes in, quite frankly, like alienation and economics, when everything is transactional, or even better yet, when everything is information space and this distance grows. There's a thing that happens. I think it's even as fundamental as we are no longer engaging all of our senses, right? Which we need to actually learn, right? So we need, like, engaging all of our 5 senses is a way that we learn, we grow. Like there's a physiological as well as emotional aspect to like having all of you in on a task. Wow, I'm off on a tangent here. But the farther we get away from the output of what we're doing and its effect on people, then the more distance that is, the more alienating that can be. And also, like, the worst case scenario is you end up doing things that are incredibly dehumanizing. I'm on a tangent, right? So think of the worst of finance, right? Everything is numbers on a page in a spreadsheet. And also you get really, really lonely, right? That's the other effect of this. And that's something that I've really enjoyed when things are working well, is that experience of solving a problem for someone and them telling you, right? Like you seeing the effect of the thing that you did on their life. That is incredibly satisfying experience. And then if you can create value, and I ran with value being more, financial, monetary, But if that can become sustainable because there's a financial transaction that takes place, then it's like, oh my gosh, that's the dream, right? And I'm close to a thing that I built and created that had a real effect on someone, and they gave me money because the thing that I created and did for them had value, and there was an exchange. Like that's a satisfying experience. And I remember the first time that happened to me on the internet. I'm like, mind blown. Like what? So
yeah.
I just,
it wasn't in an AOL chat room.
No, it was not. Man, did I go on a few different tangents there. Let me, a couple of things I was thinking about coming into this is, it was much more about me and focus on like, how would you navigate all these things personally?
Yes.
So see if you want to run with some of this stuff. But one, I've had this in mind for like a lot of the seasons and a lot of the decades so far, but it's becoming more apparent as I get older, which is the point of all this, the goal of all this is not what you achieve or do. It's who you become along the way. And what's interesting is if you are out to serve yourself, then it will be all about what you do or what you achieve or how much money is in your bank. And I know those people. I've met a lot of them. And I'll say I've met a lot of people that were really, quote, successful early on in life and ended up having to backtrack later on in life because they blew a lot of other things up. Not always, right? That's a generalization.
Yeah.
But had to go back and find the things and the path and the journey that led them back to more of who they wanted to become. And if you want to talk about entrepreneurship, if you want to talk about creating, making, you have to talk about the ultimate artistic creative experience, which is your life and becoming more of you or becoming yourself for the first time. And I just don't think you can go through the process of entrepreneurship without having to come face to face with that process as well.
Yes.
So something that I keep in mind a lot more in this journey is what are the things I'm going to do and what are the things I want to do along the way that will shape me and my behavior and my practices towards some vision of myself and my future that I have. And that has helped a lot along the way, and it's helped a lot through pivots. But I wish I would have known how to do that better earlier on.
Okay. Because I was gonna be a question is like, did you use that as a criteria for where to pivot to, or like how did that kind of becoming piece interact with the pivots along the way?
Yeah. So yes, but not skillfully. And I would say in my case, I think I'm the exception, not the norm. But I probably spend too much time. You probably experienced this when we first met. If I go out of balance in one direction, it's spending too much time focused on the internal and the character, right? So my bent is a lot of am I a good person? Am I right? Like those things. So I can spend more time focused on am I developing the right character or ethics or morals? But those are okay things. They can just be taken to extreme. So yes, I had that mindset and that perspective starting out. I think what I missed in that, though, that became another way of like achieving, right? What I missed in that was just more around these other areas of, so one, having a vision for the kind of person I wanted to be, but also like a relational vision. What kind of relationships did I want to have? What kind of, so me, what does happiness and satisfaction like look like? Like if I were to picture some scene in my mind of like me being happy and fulfilled, right? Having those kind of visions, and they normally involve people as well, right? But all this stuff. So I think there were things I didn't know about how to do that earlier on. Again, being kind of vague in that, but at least I started there, right? And I was willing to go through the journey to develop the tools of awareness to kind of mine that a little bit deeper. But yeah, where else to go with that? I have a couple of ideas. You're going to ask a question.
Well, I think what I was gonna say is, can you kind of sketch out? There's obviously some boundaries between work and personal, and then these kind of creative works, some of those boundaries get blurred. When you talk about relationships, did you feel like that was on both professional and personal sides, or how, when you're talking about this stuff becoming? I mean, there's so much of your vocation that kind of drives one's personal life. How did that all mix together for you?
Oh man, it does all mix together. It's very dynamic. It's there, and I don't think there's lines there. You can't make them distinct because, it's a great question. So clearly for me, relationships, relating to people, very important. And I really enjoy that. That's a part of this whole experience that adds a lot of value to it for me. But I've had to go through, let's like work relationships, especially with co-founders, hiring people, customers. So there's those relational dynamics, and I've compensated for people with poor relationship skills. I've tried to I've tried to make relationships that weren't function well, and put a lot of time and energy into that stuff. So that's, I think, in the professional setting, I've done those things. And then, home life, having kids, having a marriage, I've erred on the side of, well, not erred on the side. There are a lot of things I've chosen to do to the benefit of my marriage and my kids that have cost me, right, some career opportunities, right? Or I've chosen to put some constraints on certain areas. And then also vice versa. I'm in a season of career right now where I'm getting a ton of satisfaction from the work that I'm doing. It's very meaningful, and it's way too easy for me to work a lot of late nights for a lot of the week. Right. And then it's Friday and I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen my kids. And I don't want that either. But, so yes, but I think having some sense of what I want those relationships to be, right, that there's a North Star in there. And then you can back into, well, what do I need to do? What are the practices? I can have the values, and that's great. And again, if you don't have some vision for what you want your work relationships to be, if you don't have a vision for the kind of effect you want your company product thing to have on the clients, customers that use it, then why are you doing it? Right? Like, if you don't have some sense of, hey, there is some human potential I want to help unlock in the world, I guess I'm saying that in a negative way, but I think that's the best place to start, is with a high view of human potential and some vision for how you want to help others achieve that human potential. So,
yep.
How much of that did you get?
I think I got a lot of it. I think, one of the
20% of it might've been good.
No, that's so then kind of, the first part of this, we kind of sketched out the sandbox, like where are we, this space of being an entrepreneur, but even more than that, like, charting a path that isn't just this straight through, you're going to work 30 years in one place for your whole life. And then we kind of went to this idea of a little bit of like what the iterations and what the pivots look like.
Right.
So then talk about kind of like on a continuum, like when do you stop and start pivoting? Like, do you think like the pivots and iterations would continue like until?
Oh, man. Yeah. It's scale. Like, I think what we're really talking about there is scale and scope. So I have a friend who's a gentleman older than me. He is an incredible inventor and entrepreneur. Has built a wonderful company. And he said to me, many quotes of his are in my mind, but he said, whatever your current prototype is, it's irrelevant. And he was said in the context of, wow. He had two meanings on that. Like, one, in your company, you're always behind. Like, whatever you're building right now, it's already behind and someone's already doing that thing. So you don't get to stop. You don't get to stop prototyping. You don't get to stop iterating. But the thing we were talking about at the time, so that was one meaning he had. The thing we were talking about at the time was life. And that whatever your current, quote, version of life is, like wherever you are, your station in life, that's also, it's dynamic. Like, yes. you are the current prototype you have for your life is irrelevant in that it won't be the same tomorrow. And Simon, you probably learned this with young kids. One of the things about being a father and watching a baby develop that I will never forget was like, this little human is not the same person it was last week.
Yeah.
And then I told that to another friend of mine, and he said, well, wouldn't it be beautiful if we could remember that about all the relationships we have in our life? So, right. And it's, we forget, especially we've been married for a little bit while. It's like, you're supposed to be, there's seasons of marriage and people change. So prototype and iterating, yes, you are. And if you don't think you are, then you are going to be obsolete more quickly than you thought. But there's scale on these things too, right? So maybe let's put aside, okay, maybe here's where we could go with this. I think the degree at which you are iterating, right? Like, am I changing careers in that I'm going from being a mechanical engineer to a veterinarian, right?
Sure.
Like, that's a big pivot.
Right.
To, am I going to try to get a new job in the same industry that I'm in? Or am I going to move? Are we going to try a new school for our kids, right? So there's all these things. So there's scale and there's circumstances, but that aside, how might you know it's time to iterate or time to pivot? And how would you be good at it? Right. So those are some interesting things. So one, I think, is I am really attuned with my own feelings of dissatisfaction, internal and external. It is, if you ask my wife, it's one of my worst qualities. If you ask people around me that I'm in, like, that I create with and build with, right? It's where my creative energy comes from. It's also where my motive to help people comes from, right? I'm dissatisfied with things very easily. From my dad having trouble with his computer or iPhone, I'm like, user interfaces are the worst. Software should not be hard, right? Like that dissatisfaction too. I'm a bit of an idealist, but that's okay. That's become a lever I can play with, because there's skills I can develop around understanding the dissatisfaction I feel. For example, is it internal, right? Is it external? Where is the source of dissatisfaction coming from? You can develop, so for internal dissatisfaction, one of these things you're going to have to learn, whether you want to, do psychology or, counseling, if you want to do Enneagram or personality tests, whatever it is, you are going to have to develop skills for personal awareness. Who are you? Why do you do what you do? And there's a million tools out there, and some of them are terrible and some of them are great. It doesn't matter. Just pick one and start learning how to be aware of you, right? Step one, don't get it right. Just try. Okay. And then externally, this is where I've really loved, business strategy. Some is better than others, but you being able to recognize circumstances, like within your context, and then change over time. And so that's another skill you can learn to develop for external things, right? So I mean, in your business, this can do, analytics, et cetera, like competitive strategy. But so once you develop this kind of like, where's the dissatisfaction? So one, attune yourself to dissatisfaction and therefore satisfaction, right? Like there's a counter to this. Developing skills to know what's happening internally when you're experiencing dissatisfaction, and also externally, and then evaluating those things. Like that's what leads me to pivots, right? And it also helps me to see trends and mentally kind of like predict where things, I imagine where things might go a lot, right? So if I'm provoked to being dissatisfied about something, for example, 1 year ago, I'm watching my children try to do homeschool learning. They're 7 years old. And I'm watching my wife try to help them do homeschool learning. She's full-time with the kids at home, walked away from a career for, what was going to be a short season with kids. She's a wonderful mother. She's loves doing it, and she stayed there. So we had, it turned out to be a luxury to have a parent who could spend time with kids. But I was watching this whole thing unfold, and I'm just kind of playing it out. And I'm like, no, like there is something here that's not working.
Okay.
I'm watching my family go through circumstances and like taking the temperature over time and just realizing like this is dissatisfying, the effect it's having on my family. And also wishful thinking, this isn't going to go away. Right. So there were a lot of things we ended up having to do and make some changes, but we made some huge pivots. We chose to homeschool. We withdrew from school. We actually relocated so we could do a community.
Yes.
But all of that was really slow and thought out. But that was all kind of watching the circumstances around me change over time.
Yes.
And in the world of business, I've picked up some skills to be able to notice when circumstances are changing, and then also to react to them. And let go of a lot of preconceptions about what I wanted things to be. So
Cool.
that is that.
That's
What do you
good.
think? Is that helpful? Like, I don't know if I gave people some real specifics there, but like that along with maybe part 2 in this, which I want to talk about learning. But like, I think that's why I've pivoted, right?
Okay.
I've pivoted away from jobs. I've pivoted away from, now there's some downsides to orienting that way, right? Like, are you just saying like, if you're not happy, you just quit something? Because I already said, like, when I'm really convinced about something, I am so heads down and focused, I'm not going to quit.
Oh yeah.
So incredibly determined. So I'm not saying that, but I am saying there's a real skill to, and I think dissatisfaction is it, to being able to observe these things happening.
Yes.
So that's why you might pivot. Now I'm not saying,
so why?
Quit your job and go buy a motorcycle and hit the road. I don't know if it's that kind of answer, but
What about an Airstream? Would that work?
I kind of like Airstreams. That would work fine. And you could put the motorcycle in the back or something. That could work.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you have appetite for a question from the audience?
We have an audience?
We do.
I do. And is it my mom?
No.
Okay.
I'll put it up on the screen.
No, it's Dave Fantol.
Yeah.
Whoa, DVT. I know this guy.
So he's asking if retirement exists or is there a continuum?
No, you know what I think? Oh, DVT, I miss you. I want to ask Dave Fantol about this because he would have an answer to this, and I think he would probably agree. I think, unfortunately, most of us want to retire from the thing we've had to do to make money, because it wasn't. I would say I've hit this a few times, and I think especially as you get older and go through seasons and experiences, you discover more of who you are, what you love, what you're good at. You develop skills. Maybe you want to learn new skills, but then you come to this place where the internal substance of who you are feels really out of whack with your external circumstances. And that happens a lot with jobs and work and those things, right? But you need to do those. You need to make money. You need to provide. You're responsible for people. So I do think there's this kind of reckoning that comes for most of us where it's like, yeah, you know what? It's time to move on and to retire, like to lay down a thing and step away from it. Yeah, absolutely. I think that happens for a lot of people. But if that's a resignation, right? If retirement means resigning and you're going to go and, really hit the Netflix hard now because you didn't get enough of it during quarantine, right? Like that's, that's not what you want. So for those people, maybe that is like the end, but for someone who then has an opportunity to step into those other things, right? To try and take their external circumstances and match them more up with their internal, who they are and who they become. Then no, those people, they will retire things in their life, but they will not be retiring, right? Okay. They will be hopefully becoming, because isn't that what humans do, is continually become? Yeah. DVT, I miss you. I hope that was encouraging. And I would love over beers. So DVT is in Boulder, Colorado. Well, he's maybe still in Boulder, outside of Boulder, Colorado. And we've had some great conversations and some great bike rides over some great microbrews. And wouldn't that be fun to catch up? So miss you, buddy.
Good. Man, this has been like,
I got another thing. I got another thing.
Yeah.
So what are you pivoting toward? How do you know if a pivot works?
Yes.
Right. Because that's the thing.
How
do you know if it works? So here's what I would suggest. If you want to optimize in a pivot, your company, your life, your family, whatever, you're optimizing for and maximizing for, this is not really super inspiring, learning. You want to optimize for taking in more okay. So it's feedback and iteration, but as you pivot and you get into a new situation, you are going to need to be taking in new information. You're going to need to be finding new sources of information, whether that's the team around you, whether that's new skills you have to take on. And it's such a beautiful human thing. And it's such a like living organism thing, right? To have to be learning. And if you find yourself in this, if you're optimizing for learning, you find yourself in a situation where through feedback and iteration, right, you are making progress, then I think you're in a good spot. And then you like use that gauge for satisfaction, dissatisfaction at the same time. I think that's a really good indicator that the pivot is going well, right? So it's not about like, am I achieving everything I want to learn, or am I achieving everything I wanted to do with this pivot? It's about, am I learning and progressing in learning and skills and all these other things in order to someday achieve the thing I want to achieve, right? Like if that's the progress that's happening, then I think that's a good indicator that the pivot is working. Cool. It's also a good indicator that you're not experiencing scarcity.
Yes.
It's also a good indicator that you're not comfortable. Because as soon as you get comfortable, as soon as you stop taking in new information, companies do this all the time, teams, organizations, right? Like they're just kind of done with like new stuff. It's time to optimize and make what we have better. Like let's strive for efficiency. And that's the opposite of growth, right? Right? Like, so living things, if they don't eat, if they don't take in new things, they die. And with organizations, with experiences, with life, with family and relationships, if we're not in this dynamic process of taking in new things, processing them, absorbing them, like rejecting some of it, taking some in, then I don't think you're in a healthy situation. Is that a decent analogy? Does that work?
Yeah. I mean, I think the scarcity stuff, I wish we could even just dive into that for a whole episode, because I feel like there's just so it's almost just like a magnetism for the scarcity sometimes. I mean, it's just so hard to kind of buoy yourself against that, or to kind of remember to not just kind of join the rat race,
Man, so. Yeah, and I tell you what, you can live in a scarcity. You can live and operate in a place of scarcity regardless of how much money is in your bank. Right. Yeah. So it's not just about that. So yeah, that could be a whole other hour. So, but yeah, the learning thing is real. I guess the last thing on the learning thing is, and I really do think the antithesis to learning is comfort, right? Scarcity is in there, but like
so it's like
its own kind of scarcity.
So it's like learning and comfort are the two sides of that.
Yeah, a little bit, right? Okay. Because learning is dynamic, it's painful, it requires risk. So it's the skills in learning that I'm really interested in. So, but what are you learning personally? Well, are you becoming more of who you want to be in order to do what you want to do? Right? Like that's what you should be learning. If you have a vision for what you want to be, and if you're imagining and dreaming about what you want to do, then are you learning those things? Are you making that progress? And the same for your company, your organization, the people you work with, right? Like, are we learning in the direction of becoming who we need to become in order to do what we want to do? Yeah. Right. So anyway, I think those are good gauges. Is it really working?
Good. Is it working?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
And I don't know. Well, actually, I would say, and you know what? It's not going to work a lot of the time. And that's okay.
Like a pivot's not going to work, or between pivots isn't going to work, or what's the
Man, all the above.
Okay.
Right? All the above. So, I mean, I would say I'm coming out of a 10-year season of things pretty much not working.
And-
right. And like bad, like things breaking hard. And then now being in a 1.5-year season of, oh my gosh, I can't believe how great things are working.
Good.
And I can't tell you that like there was a master plan to get from one to the other. And I can't tell you the season I'm in right now is going to go on forever.
Yes.
But I could tell you it's all been building on top of each other. Right.
Okay.
So, but yeah, no, it's like failure is probably the biggest gift you can choose to receive in any pivot. But if you do that learning thing and you develop skills for learning, right? If you want to learn, you're gonna have to like learn how to measure and feedback and all those things. Then you'll be able to take failure and turn it into something greater than, failure. So
failure is the biggest gift in any pivot. I'm going to sit with that for a while.
If you apply the skills of learning to it, right?
Okay. So if you're using it to learn and kind of to take it to the next step. Yeah.
Right. And also if you have some skills of awareness, because I mean, failure, I was talking to a fellow entrepreneur this last week, and he started using failure language to describe the state of his current business and enterprise. And I said, hey, just to be clear, I've never used the word failure to talk about where you are right now, but you keep using the word failure. Why? Have you noticed that? And the reason was because he felt like a failure. Right?
Oh. But that wasn't like the actual, that was like his subjective view, but it wasn't necessarily objective.
Totally. Right. And so when does something fail?
Yeah.
When does it? Yeah. Like it's so subjective. So anyway, but all of that, it's an internal process and experience that you get to go through. And so I think that's what I mean by it can be a gift if you choose to receive it that way.
That's good. Well, I wish we had a whole nother hour, but I think we need to wrap up for now. This is really good.
I also wish we had a whole nother hour. So okay, Simon, give me a couple things, feedback to me, a couple things that, what are we going to take away from this? Because I sketched down a lot of notes. We hit a lot of those things, but like if we were going to talk again, give me a couple things here. What would we talk about next? What are the things that resonated?
I started to see some kind of like trajectory from like, okay, I'm using the failure to learn. I'm using the learning to find the next thing. And I'm, then maybe I'm becoming, who I may be more of who I was meant to be through that progression. And I think, I don't know really how you talk about who you're becoming. That might be interesting. Kind of some language around that. But I think too, there's kind of like this dichotomy between talking about some of this stuff and how it feels when you're going through it. And I'm not sure if, somebody that is contemplating if they're successful or not, if they should pivot or not, is going to be like, well, man, I'm just becoming, somebody so great right now or whatever. Like, I mean, that's not how, so maybe also like, just running some examples, or even just like, do you have practices that help you look back and see some of this stuff?
Man, yeah, okay, those are really good versus reality, right? Because when I really piss people off, like me, when people get really frustrated, is when they're like, my business is on fire, David. Like, can you help me? You seem to have some business experience. If I'm an expert. And they're like, things are on fire, or this isn't working, or I'm running out of money. Like, can you help? And then I dive into these things. Well, who are you becoming right now? Right. Like just like so unhelpful. And the reality of building a thing, doing a thing is the practical messiness of life is like in your face. You have to solve those problems. And man, it's super hard. Like to catch someone when they want to talk about these things is kind of rare, and it can't be in the heat of the moment. It can't be when like implementation execution is happening full force. But then people burn out.
Yeah.
Right. And then they try to make sense of what just happened. They try to understand why things didn't work. And then they try to figure out what they want to do next. And that's where these things can come in really handy. And they're probably not that helpful in the states in between. Right. But when you find yourself stuck, when you find yourself literally at a junction where you have to make a pivot, a transition, then like these kinds of things really do help you orient. Honestly, man, the best thing, like where to start, I could recommend a couple books, but if there was one practice I would recommend to anyone to start with, there's no magic in this. Solitude. Go spend time by yourself. And maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 30 minutes, but go find a place to be alone, turn everything off, get away from people, and go be alone with yourself. And try to do that regularly and start with an hour, maybe a couple hours. If you can go do it for a couple of days, if you get 36 hours of solitude, that is the start, and it will unlock a lot of these things that I just talked about in really weird, mysterious, paradoxical ways. But that's what I would say. If someone is actually listening to this and they're like, oh my gosh, you're telling me to like go be by myself. Like, A, I don't have time for that. B, that sounds like the worst idea I've ever heard of. Right. Like, then I would say you are not that important, and your life does not need you so much. And as a matter of fact, you owe it to yourself to be gracious to yourself, to take a step back and go find some solitude. So it will be a gift that gives back much in return. So that's a place to start. And 2 books I had written down. I do think the Enneagram is a great place to start an awareness journey. And you know what? Don't do it for yourself. Do it to like be aware of the other people around you that are really bothering you, right? Your coworkers, your business. Just start there, right? Like no one wants to like start with self-introspection. That's too hard. So fine, just do it to understand your business partner that you like can't stand, or do it to understand your customers better, your target market, or your spouse. Like just start there. But the Enneagram is a great model and a place to start. And my favorite one is The Wisdom of the Enneagram. It has this like terrible cover. Maybe it's been updated, but by Riso and Hudson. And it's really good. But start with the first third of it, understand kind of how it works. And there's a ton of Enneagram resources. Some are not as good as others, but you know what? Start with the Enneagram. Another book that I really like, that was really encouraging to me recently, I forget the author, is called Range. Have you heard of Range?
Oh yeah. Is that Dan and Chip, Heath?
No. It was, I guess we could look this up really quickly, but Range is about being a generalist. And it was really helpful to me because I'm a naturally curious person. I love learning about things, right? Thus my emphasis on learning. But it was the first book in a long time, or first resource in a long time that said, hey, being a generalist is great. And let me tell you a lot of stories about people that have been generalists. And because our culture doesn't tell us that being a generalist is great. If you want to go study something in school, you have to pick some esoteric specialty. If you want to get a job, you have to continue to specialize. So the world keeps telling us to specialize. And I think it's false. I just don't think it's a true, the world is not divvied up. Like the natural order of creation is not like divided up in all these specialties, right? It's not like all the minerals are over here and like, you know, the liquids are all like over here. Like, it's just, I don't know what I'm trying to do. Right. But like, it's all connected. And it turns out people that are like, you know, playing a sport since they were 2 years old and then were really successful in that sport. Turns out that's also super rare, but we tell those stories.
Yes.
And we convince everyone that your life is supposed to be really like monochromatic and focused and that's your only chance to make it in the world. And it's such bullshit. So range really opened me up to, wow, I'm okay. Like being a generalist is a good thing. And also it has helped me encourage other friends who have really focused on something, found themselves like, because of life in a specialty, to encourage them to like, to step out and try some new things. So range would be the other book. And that's it. Those would be my three things. Go find yourself alone in the woods, and check out the Enneagram, and go read Range.
Cool. DVT said you just told us all to go take a hike.
I did. And DVT lives in some beautiful places to take a hike.
Oh man. Well, it was good to see your face. It was good to have you stop by, and I will look forward to part 2 of this conversation at some point.
Man, thank you, Simon. Pleasure. And me as well. So good times. Oh, is this the exit? The outro?
This is the exit. Here we go.
We're outroing.
Strip it down.